Lunar New Year. So welcome everyone to Spare Their Youth meeting. I'm glad to have you. We've got a busy agenda today, and we're going to be spending the bulk of the time together on revisioning and reminding ourselves what we've done over the last 12 years of Spare Their Youth, and then having some opportunities to hear from you all what you'd like to see in the future. So hopefully it'll be really fun and engaging. We do want to kind of dive quickly in. We're meeting at the same time as a big MTC meeting, so we want to dive in with our MTC folks. I think I know most of the people on here, but I will say that I'm Hannah Capel with Alta Planning and Design, the lead for the consultant team working on Spare Their Youth, and we've got Leslie with MTC on the line and other folks from Alta who are helping us with this presentation today. So thanks everyone for joining us. And yeah, we'll go right in for Carl. I think you're the first one here to give an update about the active transportation program.
Sure. Thank you, Hannah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Carl Anderson with MTC Funding Policy and Program staff. In just a few moments, the MTC Commission is considering adoption of the 2023 Regional Active Transportation Program, or Cycle 6 as it's known more commonly. So the ATP Cycle 6, the program still remains extremely competitive and extremely oversubscribed. And so for this cycle, the state received 434 applications, and project sponsors requested $3.1 billion in funding. The average request for this cycle increased to $7.1 million from $5 million in ATP Cycle 5. So the trend for large projects is increasing and doesn't appear to be slowing down at all. For the MTC regional program, we received 63 applications, and applicants requested $544 million for about $900 million in total project costs. Notably, staff received the most applications from agencies in Alameda and Contra Costa counties, about 16 applications each. And we received the fewest applications from agencies in Napa and San Francisco at 2 each. So first, a summary of the ATP statewide results. Last month, the CTC adopted the statewide program of projects. The adopted program included 67 projects statewide for a total of $853 million. For the Bay Area, this included 6 projects for a total of $88 million, or about 10% of the statewide total. While 10% is lower than our anticipated targets, CTCs did select some great projects around the region. Notably a $40 million project in Santa Clara County and a great project in San Francisco County that is focused on enhancing improvements for equity priority communities. On the regional side of things, we had $143 million available for programming. MTC received 63 applications. To score those applications, we enlisted our own 22-person evaluation committee to score and rank those applications, and then arrived at a consensus score. For our recommendations, we are fully funding 14 projects and partially funding 1 project for a total of $143 million. 100% of the funding as proposed will benefit equity priority communities, and all the proposed projects will support MTC initiatives like greenhouse gas emission reductions or expand the regional bike network. We are also adopting a contingency project list for any projects that fail to, kind of meet the final delivery deadlines, or if there's any failures. And so we have that as well, just in case as a backup. I'll pause there for any questions before kind of rounding out the rest of the conversation. Does anyone have any questions about the ATP yet? I will also add that I will be publishing the full list. I'm just waiting to do that until after our commission takes formal action today, just in case anything changes or whatever. So that's why I don't have any material for the group today. But be sure to look out for that once the MTC commission meeting wraps up. I'll send all that information out to Hannah, and it'll be posted out on our website as well. Looking ahead for Cycle 7, staff is proposing to augment the funding for our technical assistance program. So we're hoping to expand and include additional scope for the program that can include earlier scope development for applicants, and provide some sort of more involved application technical assistance to help bolster applications and make them more competitive with the statewide program. So with that, that's my presentation. I'll pass it over back to Hannah, or if there's any questions, happy to take those as well.
Great. Thanks, Carl. Any other questions for Carl? By now we know the drill. Thank you for the update.
Yeah, no problem. And yeah, feel free to reach out if anyone does have any questions after the meeting or anything. Happy to take anything.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great. And it sounds like we have Thomas here today as well. So he's going to give us an update about OBAG 3.
That's right. Good morning, and sorry I'm late. Trying to juggle some meetings this morning. So as some of you might recall, I was presented in March 2022 to this group about for the beginning of the cycle of the OBAG 3 county and local program and the call for projects. So we've sort of concluded that process, and just as a reminder, the One Bay Area Grant, or OBAG, is MTC's framework for leveraging federal highway formula funds to advance regional objectives. And half of these funds go to what we call the county and local program, which supports local priority projects. And MTC partnered with CTAs, or sort of the county transportation agencies in each county, to issue a call for projects over the past year for this county and local program. And the recommended program projects is being considered by our commission this morning, which was the other meeting that I was bouncing back and forth from, just like ATP. And some program highlights might be relevant for this group. So it's $375 million total over 4 fiscal years, and just over $300 million of that is programmed today, or is up for adoption today. And of that, over $200 million is for active transportation projects, so over half of the funding. And then just about $50 million is for safe routes to school projects and programs. And we had a $25 million target for safe routes to school, and so we nearly doubled that target, so we're happy with that result. And this includes countywide safe routes to school non-infrastructure programs in 6 counties. And also, I wanted to note that over $200 million will be going to projects within equity priority communities. And new this cycle, we calculated the emission reductions associated with all the projects in advance to comply with some of our federal air quality funding requirements. And so you can see in the staff report, which I can share a link to, we sort of calculated the reduction, or the emission reductions associated with all these projects on the front end. We usually do that on the back end, but you can see what we're anticipating, which is exciting. Up next for the OBAG program, we have the regional side. So like I said at the beginning, sort of the funding split in half, the county and local program, and then there's the regional side. Regional programs are much more targeted, and they don't always involve a call for projects, but we will have some smaller, much more specific opportunities coming out over this year. So these will be small calls for projects for very specific programs. And then, like I said, it's a 4-year cycle. So 3 years from now, I'll probably be back presenting on the next cycle. So those are sort of some of the next steps. I can share the meeting agenda, but sort of along the same tune that Carl mentioned, these are still up for commission adoption, and there may be some changes. So yeah, maybe I'll just follow up with the final materials after instead. And then one other thing, which is unrelated to OBAG, but I was asked to give an update on Safe Streets and Roads for All, which is a new federal U.S. Department of Transportation discretionary program under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA. And so the first notice of funding opportunity for this fiscal year, 2022, closed in September of this past year, and award announcements are expected in early 2023. So I was hoping to have some news for you, but they haven't yet released those awards, but I can drop a link in the chat if you're interested in sort of tracking when they release the awards for that. And that'll be an annual program, so it'll come around again this year, and folks can apply for those funds as well. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you for the update. I'm curious if you know if communities in the Bay Area applied for the SS4A grant.
Personally, I don't know. I think we are tracking that information, so I can take that as a follow-up and see what grants we're aware, what applications we're aware of.
Great. Yeah, I imagine that the national, what do they call themselves now? The Safe Routes to School Partnership will do an analysis of that grant opportunity and the Safe Routes to School potential for it, but definitely something that I think would be of interest to this group.
Yeah, I can certainly follow up on that. Something else I'll note just under sort of IIJA programs generally, MTC sort of adopted a framework where some of the discretionary programs we're sort of pursuing as regional priority projects, and we're trying to get some regional consensus on what projects we are going after those funds for. And then some of the more local oriented programs, which includes Safe Streets for All, we're sort of just allowing it up to anybody to apply for. So we're tracking this less closely than some of the other programs just because it's more of a locally oriented program, but I can certainly follow up on the applications that we're aware of. Leslie.
Thanks, Thomas. I'm wondering, I think I heard you mention that 6 counties received non-infrastructure Safe Routes to Schools programs funds. What were the 6 counties and what about the other 3?
Sure. Yeah. So the again, this is the local priority. So these are just everyone who applied for non-infrastructure funds we're recommending for award this morning. And so those were Alameda, Contra Costa, San Francisco, San Mateo, Solano, and Sonoma are all recommended to receive funding for their Safe Routes to School non-infrastructure programs. And that's consistent with prior cycles. I think Contra Costa would be adding countywide program. Previously, they had like a sub-regional or sub-county program, at least as funded through OBAG. And so the counties that are not receiving OBAG or not recommended to receive OBAG funding for their Safe Routes to School, again, they didn't apply for it. And that would be Marin, Napa, and Santa Clara. And I'm not familiar with, I think they do have Safe Routes to School programs and they choose to fund them through different sources. So everyone who applied for programmatic Safe Routes to School funds is recommended for funding, and mostly consistent with prior cycles with the exception of Contra Costa now sort of introducing a countywide program.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great information. I know Marin has a Measure MJ, I can never remember, and Santa Clara County has Measure B funds. So I think that those are probably, and I'm not sure about Napa.
Yeah, I'll just also add that these are federal funds, so there's some complexities involved with administering them, and so some counties or who's ever administrating the Safe Routes to School program may decide that it's not sort of worth it to pursue this particular opportunity for those programs, especially if you're trying to have like a lot of incentives involved or something like that. Can be difficult. So
thank you. And that's actually a really good point, because I think the last time this group met there, we provided some information about a potential change of how the countywide Safe Routes to School programs would be funded, and that did not end up coming to fruition. So I think I'm not sure that everyone here knows, and Leslie and Thomas definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the funding is continuing kind of as it had been previously in terms of the source and the restrictions on the funds, unlike something we had said in the last meeting we had.
Yeah, so one change so OBAG includes actually 2 different fund sources. So we are moving from those sort of air quality designated funds that I mentioned. They're called congestion mitigation air quality or CMAQ funds. And we're moving to the other funding source, which is a little bit more flexible, Surface Transportation Block Grant or STP funds. So there is a bit of a change. I'm not sure if that's what you're referencing, but they're still federal funds and there's a lot of strings attached to their use.
Thanks.
Gwen, please.
Yeah, I'm with Marin Safe Routes to Schools. Do you recommend, because we do get the sales tax funding, that we should still apply for this additional funding, or would that preclude us from getting any additional money?
I would coordinate with TAM on that question. I think they would sort of be the best place to start in terms of
I will.
So the county and local program, again, is that's in your county would be TAM, that's sort of in charge of nominating projects and deciding what the priorities are. So they're probably making those types of calls. So I would reach out to them first.
Yeah, and
That's what I
historically they had
thought.
made the swap where they providing funding that's actually more, or sorry, less restrictive than the funding that other counties have, and then they spend the money that would be going to non-infrastructure on infrastructure improvements for safe routes. So it's still going to safe routes, but it's focused on infrastructure.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions for Thomas? Thank you so much for that update.
All right, thanks all. Thanks for having me. I'll drop the link to the Safe Streets for All in the chat.
Perfect. Yeah, and I know that they moved the deadline for that up, so it's going to be potentially a bit of a challenge for communities that have not already been tracking it, but also potentially less competitive. We'll see. Great. Well, yeah, we'll definitely want to continue sharing those opportunities with this group. There's a lot of funding for safety that I think the Safe Routes community has maybe not tapped yet. So we can continue talking about those. We had one more presentation from an MTC staffer who I think is not here right now. So we'll keep going.
No, Georgia's not here yet.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. Sorry to you all for double booking with the important MTC commission meeting. So we'll just let Georgia kind of jump in whenever she's available. And we will move on to the next part of our presentation. Thanks, Thomas. So actually, let's see, I am the next part of the presentation is that I wanted to provide you all. So we're going to be, like I said, talking about Spare Their Youth and what we've done and what we'd like to do in the future. So to start that part of the presentation, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see, which screen am I doing? All right, can you all see the presentation?
Yes.
Great. I want to take a walk down memory lane with you all and share what we've done over the last actually 12 years of this program. So, sorry, just getting all of my things in order. Here we go. Now I'm ready. Okay, so we have this program started in 2010 actually, but really got started in earnest in 2011. And our mission is to collaborate with organizations around the San Francisco Bay Area to encourage youth and their families to walk, bicycle, carpool, and take transit. And kind of playing into some of the things that Thomas was talking about in terms of the funding source, there has been kind of just like setting the scene of where Spare Their Youth falls within all of these different funding agencies. So back in the 90s, actually, Marin was one of the first Safe Routes to School programs. It was funded through the Federal Highways Non-Motorized Transportation Pilot Project, and was kind of the precursor to the federal national Safe Routes to School program that was established in 2005, and there was some funding, and that's part of the genesis of some people using the SR2S versus the SRTS was like different funding sources from the 2000s. That was the inception of several of the programs in the Bay Area. And then in 2010 was the formation of what's now Spare Their Youth. Then we called it the Regional School and Youth Outreach Program, or RISOP. Didn't really roll off the tongue quite as well. But, and it was a program of MTC's Climate Initiatives Program and has been always funded with actually with the CMAQ funding, congestion management, mitigation and air quality funding. But in 2012, the federal transportation bill actually ended the dedicated funding for Safe Routes to School, but that's when Caltrans established the Active Transportation Program, or ATP, and really leaned into Safe Routes to School and established a dedicated funding source through ATP, and MTC continued the regional funding through CMAQ for Safe Routes to Schools through the congestion management agencies of each of the counties, as well as the Spare Their Youth group that's really intended to be bringing everyone together and convening the groups of safe routes to school practitioners and convening these conversations and incubating new ideas. And of course, 2020 was a pretty big shift in everything in all of our worlds with the pandemic. And then in 2023, 24 is when there's going to be a new round of Spare Their Youth. And this is the opportunity to really rethink kind of where are we going? What are we trying to accomplish with this program together? So the MTC Climate Initiatives Program is really intended to reduce transportation carbon footprint. The 40% of the Bay Area's greenhouse gas emissions are produced by transportation, which you probably know. And so really focusing on school-related travel and also educating students about the benefits of alternative transportation. And so MTC has invested a lot on this program. There's a lot of different pieces to the program, and our like Spare Their Youth corner of it, and then the Safe Routes to School programs that are, like I said, at each of the counties is part of this overall strategy to reduce exhaust and pollution and promote walking and biking. I have this who's who in Safe Routes to School back from 2016, which I think is actually kind of more or less accurate. I know a lot of you all have updated logos and things since then, but the bottom line is that the funding from MTC goes to each of the congestion management agencies or the CMAs, and then those get suballocated sometimes to consultant teams or to Department of Health or Department of Education. And then
Hey, Hannah, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Georgia's here and she's also has a conflict with the commission meeting. So if she could give her update and then so she can step out, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No worries. Hello, Georgia. Go for it.
Georgia Dorman, MTC staff. Apologies for the sort of quick in and out. It is kind of a big deal. It's Therese McMillan's last commission meeting today, and then one of our very longstanding commissioners, Amy Worth, was just had her resolution read and everybody. So I was stepping in to be photo person, and so we don't have the photographer there. So anyways, hi, nice to see all of you. I think the update today is really going to be just quite high level. We're in the beginning of the legislative session at the state level, and Congress is sort of still having everything come together for what their priorities are going to be for this coming year. So I think some big picture context is that both at the state level and at the federal level, we're going to see some belt tightening compared to what sort of the increase in spending and infrastructure investments and sort of more resources that we've been seeing coming out of both our state and federal partners over the last couple of years. I think the belt tightening will be across the board. And what that means is that it's just going to be a bigger challenge to secure resources for really high priority transportation investments. And it also means that doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to bring in resources for things like active transportation and transit operating assistance and improving safety of our streets and roads. What it means is that it's going to be a bigger lift, and we're going to need a way broader coalition to be able to be successful in securing those types of resources. And so I think the biggest thing to flag is that at the state level, there are two big updates. One, there is a concerted effort from the transit community, from transit riders, equity, climate, the business community, sort of all coalescing around a sort of big push to secure state support to avoid an impending transit fiscal cliff, and to be able to provide some certainty for transit operators and some resources for transit operators to be able to invest in customer-focused rider improvements, to be able to try to build back ridership post-COVID and get us on a more sustainable financial track. So that is a sort of burgeoning effort, and it's something that, I think is going to require a whole lot of advocacy and engagement to be able to be successful at the state level right now. One of the things I think just is important context on this is that looking to the state is really the most viable option for being able to secure these types of resources. You know, the federal government over the COVID-19 pandemic did provide a lot of resources to keep transit systems operating, essential workers getting from point A to point B, and to avoid sort of massive layoffs that trigger a death spiral in transit, some of the doomsday scenarios. We have heard, even before Republicans took over Congress, we heard pretty solidly from our partners in DC that the federal government was not going to be coming with another sort of recovery package. And so I think, you know, not I think, I mean, just the reality is that with this change in Congress, that's an even less likely scenario. However, we are not going to leave any stone left unturned. So we are still working with the feds to see if, let's say the state ponies up and there's some state resources, but there's not enough but we still need some level of certainty that there'll be a backstop, right? Just in case the state resources aren't enough. Is there any way you guys would consider a backstop? So we're just trying to sort of keep all of the options open. But again, the biggest likelihood is that there'll be state resources needed. The other big update is how this request for the state to step in and help, you know, save transit is going to impact some of the capital funding that the state has been really increasing investments in for things like active transportation and the active transportation program. And, you know, I think that in a tight fiscal picture for a tight budget, the governor is certainly looking at limiting or even pulling back some of the state's planned investments in the active transportation program. So I think what that means is that, you know, there's just really going to have to be an all of the above approach to really make the case that that active transportation, safety on our streets and roads, and transit are all part of the same picture and all part of the strategy to help the state meet their climate goals and their equity goals. And, you know, some reminders that every transit rider at some point is a bicyclist or pedestrian, you know. And so I just want to flag that it's going to be potentially a bigger push this year than it has been in previous years to keep the commitments that the state and that our partners have made. But some other context that we've been used to, like, this is where we were in 2019 with transportation investments and active transportation investments. We ratcheted up here with where the feds have said, you know, they really gave a huge increase in active transportation investments. Then the state bumped that up even further. So no matter what, even if the state decreases investments a lot, we're still at a way higher level than we've been in the past. And that's something to be just, you know, I think can give us a sense of perspective. And that's really, I think the long game is to make sure that that ratcheted increase level doesn't drop. So I hope those great hand gestures and graphics really painted a picture for you guys. Sorry, I didn't have time to prepare something like a nice slide. So with that, yeah, I just am open to answering any questions or anyone, comments?
Thank you for the update. I think this is all interesting, and I think we all interface with transit in different ways, and some more than others, but I think it's still good for us all to have that update about kind of what's happening on that front.
Okay, and then the other thing I think would be maybe helpful, Leslie, if there's a way you could share with this larger group. The feds have put out a sort of anticipated timeline for when they'll be making grant opportunities available. And MTC has been keeping that updated on our website. And one of the things that, just to be a resource for folks, and one of the things that we've also done is added a layer to let folks know, here are the types of grant programs that are available for active transportation investments, for, you know, just a whole range of other types, for Safe Routes to School, for whatever, a range of sort of what the grant programs are targeted towards. And so this just hopefully can be a resource for folks as you guys look at what you do at the local level too.
Yeah, we can share it out with the larger group if you send it to me.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks for all the work you guys do.
Great, thank you so much. All right. Let me get back to the presentation, and then I'll try to get through this relatively quickly because most of it is we actually want to hear from you all and not make you listen to me. So, okay, double check that my screen share is working. I see some nods. Great. Okay, so the purpose of this is really just to say, like you all probably know, is that every county does this a little bit differently, and there's a lot of players in the Safe Routes to School world in the Bay Area. And of course, these are only the agencies. There's all of the folks who actually deliver the work and the organizations that do direct education and a lot of other partners in our worlds. All right, well, I want to take you back to 2010 and the RISOP and really the inception of the program. So I wanted to kind of quickly talk about each of the phases of the program and what we learned from those. So went back in 2010, we actually held, or 2011, we held a series of workshops where we asked about kind of the gaps in programming and opportunities. And I think there were a couple people who were in those. I feel like maybe Sarah Hadler and Christina Panza and Gwen were all back at those. Maybe Rose, I can't remember. But through those conversations, we had a workshop each of the in East Bay, North Bay, and South Bay, and we compiled everything and really took those recommendations into the next phases of the program. That really guided our work throughout. That helped us rebrand as Spare the Air Youth to really align with the Air District and their outreach work. And they also provided funding for us to offer helmets and other incentives, which, as we talked about, were not and are not allowable expenses as part of CMAQ funds. We did a lot of research into sort of best practices of the era and what's happening in the Bay Area around Safe Routes to School. And we were really intentional about it was everything to do with youth transportation and climate change. So not just branded Safe Routes, but other kinds of programs. And we identify these sort of early promise candidates is what we called them. And so the early promise candidates were, we had like a youth ambassador program. We did climate education. There was the video contest that some of you might remember. This was actually inception of the family biking program. Peer-to-peer bike education, lots of different, like these were pretty small grants that we early promise candidates and School Pool was another big one that we've kind of talked about over the years of kind of testing a ride matching software or mechanism so that folks are able the parents are able to connect with other parents. And I don't know that we've so we did evaluate each of these programs to see what we learned from them, and they're all very different. So of course they're all different in terms of how we what we took away. And I will mention that I cannot see the chat right now, so please feel free to unmute and chime in if you want, or somebody on my team is welcome to chime in if there's a chat we should discuss. But just to wrap up phase one, what we learned was that there was a lot of interest for expanding our program reach, really like the translation that MTC has been offering, implementation toolkits. People were really interested in kind of just learning more about Safe Routes to School and how to deliver it well and intentionally, and funding for giveaways and food, which have continued coming up. And interested in like new programs around middle and high school students, in particular, like student youth leadership kinds of programs, transit youth, and then the transportation summit were kind of the big takeaways back in those early days. So moving into phase two, which was like 2012 to 2016, some of the things that we did in terms of the regional activities, we created our beautiful website. We created this like resource guide that you could like look up. activities based on age and, and learn about what else was going on in the Bay Area. We had this great conference, the Youth for the Environment and Sustainability, that many of you all participated in and were key players of. We created guidebooks, and we did this call for projects where we asked for many of you were grantees through this phase 2 call, where we were asking for specific kinds of projects to fund for the remaining, I think it was 3 years at the time. And so those grantees, we funded the Aquarium of the Bay with the Baymobile, if you all remember that. They would drive around and teach kids about I forget the name, they would be disappointed with me, but how vehicle exhaust and CO2 impacts the aquatic life living in the bay, and kids could actually touch sea stars and sea cucumbers and things and learn about that. And the family biking workshops, Eco to School in Sonoma County. We had the Climate Justice Youth Academy, where some great organizations in both East Bay and in San Francisco taught youth about climate justice and transit access. And we reached a lot of students. There was we did a big evaluation with the consulting firm ICF as part of the climate initiatives evaluation. The bike mobile repaired more than 7,000 bikes. I feel like, Tommy, you probably did most of those yourself in those days. And a lot of we learned a lot about youth leadership model for reaching students, and we heard a lot of really great feedback from the programs that we offered at that time. So moving into phase 3, if you remember, Raquel Trinidad was at MTC for a while during this era. We had a new website that was even more beautiful and refreshed. We really focused on some of the high school work. We established the high school working groups. We had a workshop about equity. We aspired to do more of those. We had another Yes conference. It kept getting, it sort of grew logarithmically. And we had a big one planned in March 2020. And then COVID hit. And I'll get to that in a second. And then we narrowed in on the grantees in this era, where there's only 3 grants, but they're kind of consolidated under different groups. So the family biking workshops are, I think many of you on the call are part of this grant, or this subcontract, delivering family biking programs throughout around the Bay Area. And actually this one is notable in that we were able to reach Solano County with this one. And so we actually were able, it was 6 bike coalitions, but we were able to reach all counties of the Bay Area. The bike mobile continuing, and then the high school grants, where we kind of shifted our model for how we administered those, and we encouraged these kind of smaller, shorter term sort of incubators, and then we kind of expanded them. We gave a lot of extensions and kind of expanded them, realizing that the 1 year sub $100,000 was a really hard grant to administer, both for from us and for the folks actually trying to get the work done. That it takes longer, and you need a bigger budget and a longer period of time to actually accomplish anything. I think was one of our big takeaways. And then COVID hit, and many of you were there for this. We moved online very quickly. We, I think, some of the sort of, I don't want to call them successes, but what some, they think the Safe Routes to School community ended up being very flexible and recognizing how much value we still had, even when school wasn't in session, even when students weren't accessing school in the same way. We did some work around videography. We established these regional working groups of just trying to connect the community and connect with each other during this very strange time. And some of the things is, like I said, promoting walking biking isn't just for the school commute. I think we really honed in on that message during the peak of COVID, and hopefully haven't lost that as things are returning to a more normal I think we've, both in terms of like the things around COVID, but also like this equity focus that has been growing in the Safe Routes to School community. I think we've all talked about how this is requiring like a new approach to evaluation and rethinking like what data we're collecting, how we're evaluating our programs. And so starting that conversation. And the high school programming too, I think we've struggled with that, and the sort of leadership model, it can be very expensive, and it's hard to show an impact. So kind of rethinking our approaches to that. And then one of my personal favorite things is this working group. The data and evaluation working group has been really lovely to meet with a smaller group of you all regularly and continue those conversations in kind of a smaller setting. Yeah, Rose, what would you like to share or ask? You there, Rose?
Hey everyone, this is a really fun walk down memory lane, and so thank you so much for doing this, Hannah. It's very validating, and I wanted to add one that's just so front and center for me. Probably, oh, I'm my baby here. My jump on here with that. Oh, there you go. Okay, is the breadth and depth conversation that we always with our funding, short term, long term. The challenges of balancing out breadth and depth in terms of demonstrating our program outcomes, and that's like the constant challenge with our program is access at the same time, meaningful experiences. And so I think we always have to figure out how to strike that balance between the two in order to really generate meaningful outcomes for our programs. So that's just one of my big takeaways that I wanted to share as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Great. Well, I'm going to keep going, and then we all and feel free to chime in, but we do also we'll have an opportunity to hear from you all soon. So just the last kind of piece of the presentation is about this regional school and Safe Routes to School evaluation that we did back in, I think we wrapped it up in 2015, but a lot of the data was collected like 2012 through 2014, where we ran an evaluation of the Safe Routes to School programs at the time. And the goal was really to look at the GHG emission and climate change benefits of Safe Routes to School programming, and also just identifying successes from the regional Safe Routes to School funded programs overall. And we collected a lot of data. We collected more than 1 million data about more than 1 million school trips from 8 of the counties and 330 schools. We collected 23,000 surveys from parents. We had a lot of information. And we were able to look at kind of when each county, like I said at the beginning, like each county administers Safe Routes to School differently. And so it's interesting to see like how many of the total schools in each county, how many schools were considered part of the program. And of course, there's a lot of like caveats to all of the aspects of that sentence of like, what does it mean to be part of the program and who's eligible and all of that. So we got into lots of the weeds, but just to say that like we actually were able to include a good portion of all the schools that were actively involved with Safe Routes to Schools at the time. And what we learned from that evaluation is that Safe Routes to School does increase active transportation use and increases physical activity in youth and decreases emissions from vehicles, or at least it was, what's the scientific term that it was correlated with. We can't necessarily say that it was causal, but that we did see a difference in schools that were participating and versus schools that were just starting out. We also saw that in the first 2 years, the schools saw a much larger increase, 31% increase in walking and biking, but then it kind of tapers off so that maybe continued to increase walking and biking, but much smaller than that kind of massive increase. And so when we're looking at celebrating the percent change, a more established program is going to show less percent change. So, but it's not that it's less effective, it's just that it's already benefited from that kind of threshold, the low-hanging fruit, as it were. We also looked at the different kinds of activities and kind of was there a correlation between schools that offered the certain kinds of activities and the mode shift and mode splits. And we definitely found that recurring activities, so walking school buses, regular walk to school days and those kinds of things had the greatest impact on mode shift, which makes sense from a behavior change standpoint. And then in terms of like looking at kind of how programs were administered, there was like an advantage to the countywide programs that were kind of more efficient at reaching a larger number of schools. But I think to Rose's point, like there is definitely something to be considered in terms of like breadth versus depth that we can kind of get into. So that's my quick presentation. Thank you all. I definitely consider this a program that you all have created, and I've had the honor of supporting you all in this on this journey. I think our next I'm sharing my screen. So I believe that Leslie was going to quickly share next the sort of MTC's next steps and priorities that will feed into the conversation that we're going to have next. So Leslie, would you like me to share the slides and just go through them?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Hannah, if you
no
could just go
problem.
to the next slide, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Hi, everybody. Leslie with MTC staff. Thank you, Hannah, for sharing that presentation and taking us back through memory lane. That was great to see. And it's been, I'm realizing like we should have had like a 10th anniversary celebration or something, but it happened during the pandemic and it just, I didn't even realize like we had already passed 10 years of this program. So yeah, so we are actually moving forward with re-envisioning the Spare the Year Youth program because the contract with Alta will expire in a couple of years. Actually, it expires in October 2024, but because of the way we wrote the contract, we were able to expand for another year in case we didn't expend all the funding. But we actually only have funding for this program through October of this year, 2023. So we're starting to sort of do what we did at the beginning of the program back in 2010 and 2011, and just taking a step back to reassess where we've been, where we are, and where we'd like to take the program. So over the next few months, we're going to be reassessing, look, as Hannah mentioned, when back in 2010, we wanted to investigate all the gaps. We wanted to find out what existing programs were out there, and take all of that information and sort of come up with a program that adds value to what you all are already doing. And so we're starting this process now, and we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you today on what you would like the program to become. We also want to hear about elements that should be continued or not continued. So all of that information we'd like to hear so that we can make staff recommendations to our executive team, and they can decide how the program moves from there. So just to set context for a conversation, in recent months, MTC has been working to really increase coordination among all of the TDM programs that we have, both here in MTC and then the external programs. A lot of our counties and local jurisdictions have their own transportation demand management programs, which is the Spare the Year Youth program, the Safe Routes to School programs. Both are considered transportation demand management. These focus specifically on youth. The rest of the programs that we have throughout the region are targeted more toward adults. But one of the priorities for MTC is to increase coordination among everything that's out there. We're also, as Thomas mentioned earlier, we're trying to sort of refocus back on the initial, I don't want to say restrictions, but because we certainly took a lot of leeway in interpreting the CMAQ rules as we implemented this program, but the feds do want us to refocus back on actually reducing greenhouse gas emissions And so sort of bringing this back to a youth mobility program versus, you know, we spent a lot of funding on leadership type of activities, especially in the high school realm. So just bringing it back to what the requirements are for the CMAQ funding that we receive for this program for the future. And then we also want to support implementation of Plan Bay Area 2050. And this is a goal across all of the work that we're doing at MTC and ABAG now is really want to implement our long range regional plan and the specific strategies that this program helps to support our T2, which is the transportation strategy number 2, which is to support community-led transportation enhancements in equity priority communities. T7, which is advance other regional programs and local priorities. T8, which is to build a complete streets network. T9, which is to advance a regional Vision Zero policy through street design and reduce speeds. And then EN9, which is environmental strategy number 9, which is to expand transportation demand management initiatives. So we did receive a little bit of extra funding from the OBAG 3 cycle than we did in previous cycles to sort of help move those forwards. And then we also want to address federal performance requirements. And sorry, I meant to have those up. I can follow up on what those are. In terms of the program priorities, we want to, continue support implementing best practices across the region, and also want to take a look back at all the evaluations that we did in the past, because we never really worked to sort of put forward, they included recommendations, but we never really worked towards implementing any of those recommendations. So we want to see what's feasible. So we'll be looking back at those over the next couple of months and just seeing if there's anything there that we should be moving forward. We also want to explore continued implementation of regional efforts with demonstrated greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So when we did the climate initiatives evaluation, 2 of the programs that showed the greatest reduction in greenhouse gas emissions were the Bike Mobile and the Family Biking Workshop. So we want to explore if we're going to be continuing those and how we want to continue them. Do we want to reshape them or keep them as they are? And then last is support high school programming expansion in the Safer to School world. So envisioning maybe creating a TDM program for high school students that's region-wide or that is local, and providing support to to the counties and the local programs. These are all the priorities, but we'll see where all of the research that we're going to be conducting over the couple of months, where it takes us. And then with that, I can hand it back to Hannah, and we're going to have our discussion, right? Were we going to do this now or at the end of the discussion? Oh, okay.
Yes, good point. Thank you, Leslie. So great. Thank you so much for that summary. And now this is enough hearing from us. We are going to go into working groups and have a little Jamboard session. So shall I, where's the Jamboard? There it is. We can put that in the chat box, and then we're going to be breaking into groups, and we've got 2 sessions for you all. I think we may come back very quickly, running a little bit later than we wanted to be, but we sort of anticipated that. So we're gonna start by doing some reflecting and visioning for kind of what Spare Their Youth as it all is. And then the next one, just the second one is going to be more about specific resources and specific activities and gaps and things like that. So save those kind of specifics for the next one. This one is really about kind of how have you benefited or interacted or learned from Spare the Air Youth, and like talking about the vision of the program. So we'll put you in your small groups, and then we'll have a facilitator in each group who will talk a little bit about Jamboard if you haven't used that before, and we've got that all set up for you. So Nora, is there anything else you want to say? We should say
the breakouts will be 20 minutes each, and so we'll do the first one, reflection and visioning. We'll come back together 20 minutes, come back together for a minute or two, do another 20 minutes with new people. So that's the time frame. There's about 5 people in each group. And yeah, group 3, I'm your facilitator. So I'm going to sort everyone and then I'll pop in there after. So I'll be a moment late. But any questions? Cool. We just had a couple people leave. So let me make sure that the breakouts are evenly distributed.
I can get you all started with the
looks good.
Jamboard in the meantime, and we'll.
Okay, I'm gonna. Wendy, question.
Less of a question, but just something I wanted to address the whole group, which might inform some of our conversations. I am on the MTC Policy Advisory Council, and I'm vice chair of the Transformation Action Plan subcommittee, which advises this whole process that's going on, that's reevaluating our transit systems throughout the Bay Area. Schools are never mentioned, ever, unless I bring it up. So I would like to hear from the group what you would like me to bring to these meetings that are relevant. So I just wanted to put that out there before we broke up into groups.
I can't stress enough how important and great it is that we have a champion on the Policy Advisory Council for Safer Schools projects and programs and youth-related projects. So bring your ideas to Wendy.
That is fantastic. Yeah, I did not realize that. So thanks for sharing, Wendy.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to open the rooms. And Anna, I know Leslie, you were gonna float. Anna, you were gonna stay here. I was gonna make you a co-host.
I should
you
be
already
a
are a
co-host. Yeah, I
co-host.
came in
So you can like
proper way.
broadcast a message when there's like 5 minutes left or something. Just
Okay, so I'll watch in that respect.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
you
and I'm
said
gonna
they'll automatically close it,
they'll
right?
automatically close.
Got it.
Okay,
I
I'm
didn't
gonna
see the invitation to go into a room.
Oh, maybe we need to make you a co-host.
I think I have to assign. Okay, or I can assign you.
I think you
Maybe
should be able to float. Or yeah, Anna can put you somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, if you make her
Oh,
co-host, she'll
there
be
it
able to
is.
float.
I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Is that working, Leslie?
Yeah, I was just reading the names of who's
Oh,
where.
fair enough. I'll be
Where
here
did
if you need
Marcella
anything.
go? I just don't want to go. into
She's
this.
in group 2.
Okay.
Marcella is, yeah.
Group 1. All right, see you.
See you. Hello, David, can you hear me? David, if you can hear me, everybody's in breakout sessions, so I can assign you if, hi,
Oh, hi.
can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, sorry, I'm not.
People are in breakout sessions and I can add you to one if you want to jump into the conversation.
Sure. Actually, yeah, let me just change something. I don't know why it shows my coworker's name on my tag. I'm Adrian.
Oh, you're
Actually, I'm
Adrian. I should
Cardenas.
know.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good to see you,
No,
Adrian.
no worries. No
Yeah,
worries.
we're
I was just like, wait.
Where is everybody? That's why I'm in the lobby. So,
Cool.
great. I'll let you change your name, and then if you like, I'll go ahead and just stick you in one of the breakout groups. They're having a conversation about like kind of helping division spare their youth. So there'll be some prompts for you to respond to.
It's so nice to meet you. I don't think we have met. I have seen your email like in a lot of our
Yes.
recordings. So
and what's
nice
your
to meet
role
you.
at SF Bike?
I'm a youth and family coordinator.
Oh, cool. Great. Yeah. I've seen your name too. And yeah, I'm a programs associate at Alta, former SF Bike Coalition employee. So.
Oh, really? Awesome. What in your role and you're SFMTA now?
No, I'm at Alta
Correct.
Planning and Design, but our big,
I got it.
our contract is with MTC, which is why we're on this project. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Cool. Yes, I was able to rename my
Oh, I see. It looks good now.
Cool.
So I'm gonna put you into breakout group 2. Here you go.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
never know if 20 minutes is going to be too little or too long, but. So Anna, do we have time for a couple minutes of share back and then we'll go into the next one?
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for being my timekeeper there. Yeah. Great. Well, welcome back. I think everybody is back now. It's a slightly smaller group, but really appreciate your thoughts on all of this. Does anyone want to share any sort of quick takeaways or what your conversation was, and then before we launch into the next conversation? Wendy?
Yeah, one of the things that Gwen and I were bringing up in our group is that Safe Routes to Schools is more than just being able to measure how many more people walk this semester or this year. We are actually creating a culture of walking and biking. We're teaching kids and their parents oftentimes how to do it. We're addressing the infrastructure issues that get in the way. So we're dealing with long-term changes to a community that is often hard to measure. And people and funders who are looking for short-term gains.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of us agree with that point. Other quick thoughts?
To that point, I've always thought that it'd be great if there was possible to do some type of more like longitudinal, like decade plus long study, people who move through our programs and see how they end up later in life.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Great. Well, I don't know. I know my group only got to the conversation about the mission statement kind of at the very end there, but I invite you all to, continue adding sticky notes and other thoughts as you feel, as the mood strikes you, and or sharing, things via email as well, if that's an easier forum for you all. Well, with that, let's go ahead and just dive into the next conversation, since I know time is precious. So for the second session, we're going to be focusing more, we're going to actually ask us like one of the questions that we asked back in 2011 of what's the gaps in the program. So what do we want to be doing that we're not able to be doing as Safe Routes to School providers and other groups reaching school and youth about transportation and climate change. So with that, I think, Nora, anything else before we go? And sorry, Leslie, about your internet problems. Is frustrating.
I think it's all set. These are going to be shorter breakouts, so we have enough time for the wrap up. So we'll do 12 minutes, but Anna, feel free if you think we need more time, you can cut us out earlier. But I think 12 will be good. Okay, and hopefully you're in a new room. If you're not, sorry. You may be in the same room, but it'll probably be mostly a different group of people. And your facilitator will have more information for you.
Thanks, Nora.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, now they're open. Okay, did that work well last time to have Anna stay and Leslie float?
Yeah, I let one person in, somebody came late, so that seemed useful to me. Yeah, and then Leslie, are you back online? I didn't realize you were having trouble.
I am back online, but I'm on my phone and I can't quite figure out how to join a room. So I think I'm going to stay behind in the main room for now.
Okay, I can assign you, Leslie, if you like.
Okay.
If you want to peep into one of the conversations. Do you have a facilitator you'd like to be paired with, or a person in the room?
If George is by himself without a note taker, yeah. Whoever doesn't have a note taker.
Okay. Looks like. I think I can't remember who we assigned the note taker. So Charlie is facilitating one, Nora's the other, Hannah and George.
And George.
I'll put you in George's room.
Okay,
Does
sounds
that sound
good.
good. Okay. I hope that worked. Can you still hear me, Leslie?
Yeah, I can, sorry.
Oh, that's weird.
Hold on one. Oh, here it is.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Hey, Leslie, are you back? Hey, Leslie, can you hear me?
And our internet is back.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's so frustrating. But it looks like you're back online.
Yes, can you send me back to George's room, please?
I can.
Or
Yes.
I don't know if I'm still a co-host.
I can make you one if you're not. Do you have a preference, or do you just want me to send you there?
Yeah, just send me there. Thank you.
Oh, you got it. Okay, that should work.
Well, that one felt like it went much faster. Gwen, did you want to say something?
Just real quickly, one thing that came up in our group is for regional programs. So we have more publicity going out completely as the region, for example, with Vision Zero, with programs that elevate the high school programs, where we can't come up with the individual funding for programs like Strava or Right Amigos, but if we could get that from a Bay Area funded, it would be serve us all best. That's it.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I was going to open up if anybody wants to share any, the conversations you were having or something you didn't get a chance to share in that last focus group conversation. We were discussing in our group, middle school youth kind of getting left behind. They're both, some of the highest users of walking and biking to school already, and some of the sort of standard safe routes to school materials may feel a little juvenile for that group. And there's a new focus on high schools and the middle schools may be kind of left behind in that. Any other thoughts about gaps? I look forward to reading all of your sticky notes. Well, I know my group did not get to this last question, but I want to point out to you all that there is a final slide in the Jamboard, the slide 10, which is there anything else we should consider for the next phase of Spare Their Youth? It is very open-ended. Please, whenever, well, I should say this week, go in and add something, if you have thoughts, add them here. And after this week, maybe email them to us, and we probably will not come back and look at this, or we'll download it and we'll use it kind of static. So please feel free to add your thoughts, and we'll.
Also, I wanted to add, Anna, if anybody wants to reach out individually, I'm the staff person who will be making the recommendations for the future of this program. So if you want to reach out and meet individually as well, it's totally I'm available, and I love to hear all of your ideas because you all have great ideas.
Great, thanks, Leslie. So should we maybe go into the next steps and then we can circle back and use the rest of our time? I can share my screen again.
Thanks, Hannah. So I mentioned briefly earlier, the work plan over the next 2 to 3 months is we're going to be reassessing the gaps and needs in both regional and local plan programming. And we'll be exploring opportunities for continued regional leadership. As I said earlier, we want to be a program that adds value to the work that you all are already doing. And then we'll also be re-examining or reimagining the regional high school programming. I mentioned earlier the idea of creating a TDM program for high school students, but also we need to reassess the future of the YES conference. We may have lost the Air District as a partner there, but we're still in conversations around that. And then also the future of the high school mini grants program and what that looks like in the future. We'll be diving into that. In terms of the timeline, this needs assessment / research we'll be doing will be conducted from January through March, and then I'll share my staff recommendations in March to our leadership, and hoping to be able to do the procurement for the next contract, which will be the next phase of the program between April and June, and start phase 4 with the consultant on board in July of 2023. So there may be some overlap between the current contract and the new contract, and we'll just, we'll finish out this phase, everything that we've already committed to, the family biking workshop, bike mobile visits, all of that, and there may be some overlap. We'll see. So those are the next steps. And I think I went over this slide
Sorry,
already.
you
Yeah,
already
that's
went.
okay.
I
Okay.
don't know why that was went backwards.
No worries.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. That is great. Any questions for Leslie about these next steps? So we wanted to also ask that we have got, so like Leslie said, we have the current contract is through October 31st of 2023. We've got another quarterly, we've got what, 3 more quarterly calls with you all?
2024, Hannah.
2024, sorry. Knew that. There's only funding through 2023, right? But we've got, so we have, funding for, I think, another 3 of these quarterly calls or quarterly meetings. And one thing, and we'll probably mostly do this on, via poll, but one thing that we wanted to gauge folks' interest in is how we should do what kind of format you want to have these meetings moving forward. So Nora, you have some polling questions. Do you want to lead us through
Yes.
those on this topic?
Sure, they're actually all in one poll. There's 6 questions, and yeah, you may want, it'll take a few minutes because a couple of them are like short answer. So I'll launch it, take maybe like 4 minutes or so, to like 11:50-ish. Yeah, okay, I'll launch it now. Let me know if you have any issues filling it out, but should be all set.
Were there only the 2 questions?
No, there should be 6. Are you only seeing 2? Try scrolling down. Looks like I'm seeing answers trickling in for all 6. So yeah, let me know if you can't find them for some reason.
I know we gave you sort of limited options, so feel free to add other ideas in the chat or other concerns.
Can I see the poll again? Because I only saw the 2 questions.
You should be able to, at the bottom, there's like a polls button, and you should be able to pull it back up.
A polls button. Nope.
No, I don't think if they're participant only, I don't think you can open it again, but we can share it with you separately, Wendy, and you can answer the questions.
Thank you.
So Nora, I don't actually have access to the results either.
Yeah,
so
they're still coming in, and then I'll be able to download it later. So I'm not going to share them live right now with people because it's just a lot of questions, but this is super helpful in terms of how these meetings are influencing you all. And then so like Hannah mentioned, we have some different options for how we're moving forward in terms of structure. So that's really what we're curious about for questions 4 and 5 is what kind of structure you'd like to see. And then I'm still seeing some answers coming in, so I think giving another minute would be good. I'll let
And
you know.
we can evaluate it offline and share
Yeah.
back with you all. I think we'll probably, I'm
Mhm.
sure we'll have follow-up questions for you all, but I do think, really underscore, Leslie's presentation and that this is the time that, you can weigh in on the future of the Spare Their Youth program. I think all of the, stories of how you've interfaced or interacted with the program are really valuable. Your thoughts about what's been working well or what you think maybe isn't a great priority would be really valuable, and really any feedback. So one of the things that we did not really talk about, question that we'll probably send in the notes, is what resources that are currently part of Spare Their Youth or that could be in the future would help support your local programming in particular, because we focused on the MTC priorities, but also like what else would help you all do your jobs better. So think about that too, and we'll probably send you a poll question about that. I've been trying to end meetings about 10 minutes early, so I'm actually kind of thinking we can wrap up here quickly. I will say thank you all so much for your thoughts and contributions to this conversation. And I'll open up just quickly if anybody has any final thoughts, or also sometimes we do announcements or upcoming events or any of that. So this is a good time to share anything you'd like to. Nobody? I know 2 hours is a long time for a Zoom call. We're all kind of
Sorry,
over Zoom.
real quickly, Hannah, I just shared my
Yes.
contact information in the chat if you want to meet individually.
Great. Thanks so much, Leslie.
And thank you all for your feedback. It's really helpful, and I really love to hear in the groups that I was in, just your ideas and your feedback and how this program has impacted your work. So it's really gratifying, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Awesome. And we'll see the results of the survey if it makes sense to do some in-person something before the end of this contract. I think it would be lovely to see you all in person and have a little gathering, and maybe we can do our 10-year +3 +2 celebration at that point and see who else is around from those days. All right, well, I'll stay on the line for a little bit longer if anybody else wants to chat, but we can formally end the meeting, and thank you all so much for joining us and for the conversation.
Yeah.
Nora, you can stop recording.